The words hung in the air like the last note of a song. Every being in the tribunal chamber stared at Daniel. Every being watching across the galaxy held their breath. "You cannot do that," Karth said. He had been standing near the back of the chamber, but now he pushed forward, his scales pale with shock. "The inheritance belongs to whoever passes the test. That is what the artifact said. You cannot simply give it away." Daniel looked at the Velthari prosecutor. He saw fear and confusion in those yellow eyes, but underneath that, he saw something else. He saw hope. "The artifact said many things," Daniel replied. "It said the criterion was empathy. It said the first ones wanted to find a species that would think of others before thinking of itself. What better way to prove empathy than to share?" He turned to face the cameras again. The artifact blazed in his hands, responding to his intentions in ways he did not fully understand. "I am not a leader," Daniel said. "I am not a warrior or a king or a politician. I am a scientist. I dig up old things and try to understand them. For most of my life, that is all I have ever wanted to do." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "But today, I dug up something that changed everything. Not just for me, but for all of us. Every species in this galaxy. Every being watching this broadcast. The first ones left behind a gift, and that gift was not meant for one species alone. It was meant for everyone." The artifact spoke then, its ancient voice filling the chamber and echoing across the stars. "The human speaks truly, and in doing so, he has completed the test." Light exploded from the cylinder. It was not the soft glow that Daniel had grown used to, but a cascade of brilliance that seemed to fill all of space. The light poured through him, through the walls of the chamber, through the hulls of every ship in orbit, through the void itself to reach every corner of the galaxy. Daniel felt knowledge flowing into him. Star charts that showed every world in the universe. Scientific principles that explained the deepest mysteries of reality. Philosophical frameworks that answered questions beings had been asking since the beginning of thought. Artistic traditions that capture beauty in forms he had never imagined. The accumulated wisdom of a species that had achieved everything and chosen to give it all away. But the knowledge did not stop with him. It flowed outward, spreading like ripples in a pond. On every ship, on every world, beings were receiving fragments of the first one's legacy. Not weapons, not tools of conquest. Understanding of how to communicate more clearly across the barriers of language and culture. Understanding of how to resolve conflicts without violence. Understanding of how to see others as worthy of the same consideration one gave oneself. The light faded slowly, leaving the tribunal chamber dim and quiet. Daniel stood alone on the platform, the cylinder cool and dark in his hands. It felt lighter now, as if it had released something that had been building inside it for 40,000 years. On the screens around the chamber, Daniel could see the Korath flagship. Its weapons had powered down. Its advance had stopped. On its bridge, something remarkable was happening. The Korath commander, a massive warrior whose species had not shown weakness in 10,000 years, was weeping. Tears rolled down his scaled face as he stared at something only he could see. All across the galaxy, similar scenes were unfolding. Enemies who had fought for centuries were suddenly talking. Species that had refused to communicate for generations were reaching out to each other. The barriers that had divided the galaxy were crumbling, replaced by something new. Something fragile but full of potential. Counselor Vethra approached Daniel. Her compound eyes reflected the dim lights of the chamber, and her expression was one he had never seen on a Silurian face before. It looked like wonder. "You could have taken everything," she said quietly. "You could have made humanity supreme. You could have ruled the galaxy forever. Why did you give it away?" Daniel thought about the question that had started all of this. The question he had asked on that dark moon when he first touched the artifact. Were the first ones happy? Because they would not have wanted me to keep it, he said simply. And I think I finally understand why they left it all behind. Vethra tilted her head. Why? Because having power means nothing if you are alone with it. They had everything, but everything was not enough. They wanted something more. Something that power cannot give you. And what is that? Daniel looked around the chamber. He saw a species that had been enemies for thousands of years standing together, sharing the wonder of what they had received. He saw Karth and Velthari and Solorians and dozens of others, all looking at each other with new eyes. Connection, he said. Family. The knowledge that you are part of something bigger than yourself. The first ones had all the power in the universe, but they were alone. When they left their inheritance behind, they were not giving away their technology. They were inviting us to become their children, to continue what they had started, to be a family together. The Korath commander appeared on one of the screens. His face was still wet with tears, but his voice was steady. Human, he said, I owe you an apology. I threatened to destroy you. I was ready to kill everyone on that station to take what you had found. But now I understand something I never understood before. What is that? Daniel asked. That taking is easy. Giving is hard. You had everything, and you gave it away. That is a kind of strength I have never seen before. Daniel shook his head. It was not strength. It was just common sense. The first ones did not create the test to find the strongest species or the smartest species. They created it to find the species that understood what really matters. Lavra found him later in a quiet garden aboard the Tribunal station. Plants from 100 worlds grew together in carefully managed harmony. Daniel sat on a bench, watching a fountain that sprayed water in patterns no human engineer would ever have designed. The fleets were dispersing. Their crews had received too much wonder to remember why they had come armed. For the first time in recorded history, every species in the galaxy was truly talking to each other. Not negotiating, not threatening, talking, sharing, learning. You gave away the greatest prize in the universe, Lavra said, sitting down beside him. I gave everyone a chance, Daniel replied. That is all anyone can really give. The colonial authority is confused. They do not know whether to thank you or arrest you. You had the power to make humanity the dominant species in the galaxy, and you just handed it out like candy. Daniel smiled. Do you think they will arrest me? Lara shook her head slowly. No. Whatever you gave us, whatever knowledge the artifact shared, it changed something in everyone who received it. People are different now. Kinder, more willing to listen. Even the politicians. That is a miracle. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the alien fountain dance. What will you do now? Lavra asked finally. Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out the cylinder. It was completely dark now, its surface smooth and cold. The judge of all had gone silent after its final proclamation, its purpose fulfilled after 40,000 years. But Daniel could still feel something there. Not a presence exactly, but an echo. A warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. The memory of beings who had once held this same artifact and asked themselves the same questions he had asked. Were they happy? Daniel thought about everything that had happened. The trial, the awakening, the fleets and the threats, and the moment when he had chosen to give instead of take. He thought about what the galaxy might become now that everyone shared a piece of the first one's wisdom. I think I will go back to digging, he said. There are more artifacts out there. More secrets waiting to be found. Maybe not from the first ones, but from others. The galaxy is very old, and it has seen many civilizations rise and fall. Larva nodded. Looking for more ancient mysteries? Looking for more questions to ask. Daniel turned the cylinder over in his hands. That is what the first ones taught me. The answers are nice, but the questions are what matter. The willingness to wonder about others. To care about beings you have never met. To ask not just what things are, but who made them, and whether they were happy. He put the cylinder back in his pocket and stood up. I think the first ones were happy, he said. In the end, after everything they achieved and everything they gave away, I think they found what they were looking for. And now maybe we can too. Laura stood up beside him. A galaxy full of species that actually care about each other. That would be something new. It would be something beautiful, Daniel agreed. And that is worth more than all the technology in the universe. They left the garden together, walking toward whatever came next. Behind them, the alien fountain continued its dance, and somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, the children of the first ones were learning to become a family. The end. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room Daniel Cooper had ever seen. It stretched upward for nearly 1,000 feet, its walls made of living crystal that glowed with soft blue light. 12 massive chairs sat in a circle at the center, each one designed for a different species. And in the middle of that circle, standing on a small platform meant to make visitors feel small, stood Daniel. He had been the human ambassador for 15 years. Before that, he had been a soldier. Before that, a farmer's son from Kansas. Now he was 63 years old, his hair turning gray, his body tired from decades of service to a galaxy that had never once said thank you. The Council of 12 looked down at him with expressions that ranged from boredom to open disgust. High Counselor Verthax, the leader of the Kethrani species, sat in the largest chair. He was a reptilian creature, nearly 9 feet tall, with scales the color of dried blood and eyes like yellow fire. His species had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had never lost a war. They had never known defeat. They had also never done their own work. That was what humans were for. You have heard the new decree, Verthax said. His voice was cold and sharp, like metal scraping against stone. Your species will increase its resource contribution to 60% of total output. This is not a request. This is a command. Daniel kept his face calm. Behind him, near the chamber doors, his aide Katie Brennan stood with her hands folded. She was young, only 32, but she had the same tired look that all humans developed after working with the Council. It was the look of someone who had been insulted too many times to count. High Counselor, Daniel said, keeping his voice level, humanity already gives 40% of everything we produce to the Council. Our people work double shifts in your factories. Our soldiers die in your wars. Our scientists build your weapons. 60% would leave us with nothing. A clicking sound came from the left side of the chamber. That was Counselor Vrex, the representative of the Vraxi species. The Vraxi were insectoid creatures with 6 arms and compound eyes that saw in every direction at once. They were known for their cruelty and their short tempers. Nothing is exactly what you deserve, Rex said. Your species is useful, human. That is all. You are tools. Tools do not complain about how they are used. Laughter filled the chamber. The crystalline Selenari made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. The gas giant dwelling Morphi rumbled with amusement. Even the normally silent Thornax, a species of living plants, rustled their leaves in what passed for mockery among their kind. Daniel waited for the laughter to stop. He had waded through a lot of laughter over the years. Humans had been members of the Galactic Council for 300 years, and in all that time, they had never been treated as equals. They were the newcomers, the primitives, the species that had barely figured out space travel when the Kethrani found them dead. It did not matter that human engineers had built the station they were standing in. It did not matter that human doctors had cured diseases that had plagued alien species for millennia. It did not matter that human soldiers had died by the millions defending worlds. They would never be allowed to live on. To the Council, humans were servants. Nothing more. "High Counselor," Daniel said when the chamber grew quiet, "I must remind you that humanity has fulfilled every obligation required by our membership. We have never broken a treaty. We've never failed to answer a call for aid. We have given you our best and brightest for 3 centuries. Verthax leaned forward in his chair. His yellow eyes narrowed. "And yet, you dare to question us? You dare to stand in this sacred chamber and suggest that your primitive species deserves consideration? I suggest only that we deserve fairness. Fairness." Verthax spoke the word like it tasted bad in his mouth. "Your species exists because we permit it. We could have destroyed your little planet when we first found you. We could have taken your resources and left you to starve. Instead, we allowed you to join us. We gave you access to technologies your simple minds could never have developed on your own. And this is how you repay us? With complaints?" Daniel felt his hands tighten at his sides. 15 years of diplomacy had taught him to control his anger, but some things were hard to hear. The technologies Verthax mentioned had all been developed by human scientists. The Council had simply taken credit for them. "The decree stands," Verthax said. "You will comply. If you do not, there will be consequences." Daniel looked around the chamber. 12 species, 12 representatives, 12 faces that showed nothing but contempt for everything human. He thought about the billions of humans working in mines and factories across the galaxy. He thought about the soldiers dying on distant battlefields. He thought about his own daughter, who had wanted to be a doctor, but was forced to work in a Kathrani weapons plant because the Council needed more missiles. He thought about the message he had received that morning from Earth. A single word. "Ready." "Very well," Daniel said. His voice was soft, almost gentle. "Then I have an announcement to make." The counselors exchanged glances. This was not how humans usually behaved. They argued, they pleaded, they begged. They did not make announcements. "Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council," Daniel said. Effective immediately. Silence filled the chamber. It was the kind of silence that comes before a storm, heavy and full of electricity. Then Verthax laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Withdraw? You cannot withdraw. You are bound by treaties, by obligations, by 300 years of service. Treaties you broke when you declared us lesser beings," Daniel said. He turned and began walking toward the doors. Obligations end when respect ends. As for our service, well, you will soon discover exactly how much you depended on it. Stop. Verthax rose from his chair. His scales bristled with anger. If you walk out of this chamber, there will be war. We will burn your worlds. We will enslave your people. You will learn what happens to species that defy the Council. Daniel stopped at the doors. He looked back over his shoulder at the High Counselor. For the first time in 15 years, he smiled. "You are welcome to try," he said. "But I should mention something first. The Void Swarm was spotted 3 systems away from your core worlds yesterday. I know because human scouts found them. Human scouts you never bothered to thank. The color drained from Verthax's scales. Good luck, Daniel said. You are going to need it." He walked through the doors. Katie Brennan followed him. Behind them, they heard shouting, screaming. The sound of alien voices raised in panic. Neither of them looked back. The humans were done serving, thought it was time to go home. The message reached every human in the galaxy at the same moment. It appeared on personal communicators, work terminals, ship consoles, and hospital screens. It was 3 words long. Come home now. On Sentinel Station, the largest military outpost in Council space, Admiral Ben Holloway read the message and nodded once. He had been waiting for it for 20 years. His entire career had been spent preparing for this day, the day when humanity would finally stop pretending to be servants. "All hands," he said into the station-wide communicator. "Begin evacuation protocol 7. You have 6 hours." Around him, the command center erupted into quiet, efficient motion. Human officers shut down their stations, collected their personal items, and headed for the transport base. There was no panic, no confusion. They had practiced this drill 100 times. Commander Laura Price stood beside him, watching the organized chaos with something close to pride. She was his second in command, a woman of 45 who had spent her entire adult life in space. She had 3 children back on Earth she had not seen in 2 years. "The Kathrani general is demanding an explanation," she said. "He says we cannot leave without permission." Ben almost laughed. "Permission? Tell him we are taking a vacation. He will not accept that. He does not have a choice." The general in question was named Karthok. He was a typical Kathrani officer, arrogant and quick to anger. When the human evacuation began, he stormed onto the command deck with 20 armed soldiers behind him. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. His yellow eyes swept across the room, taking in the empty stations and the departing crews. "You cannot abandon your posts. I order you to return to your duties." Ben turned to face him. He was not a tall man, barely 5'10", and the Kathrani general towered over him by nearly 3 feet. But Ben had commanded warships for 30 years. He had faced pirates, rebels, and horrors from the void between stars. One angry lizard did not impress him. "General," he said calmly, "humanity has withdrawn from the Galactic Council. We are going home." "Impossible. You are soldiers of the Council. You serve at our pleasure. We serve no one anymore." Ben checked his communicator. The evacuation was proceeding on schedule. "I suggest you begin training your own people to run this station. The shield generators need maintenance every 72 hours. The weapon systems require daily calibration. The life support filters have to be changed weekly." Karthok's scales darkened with rage. "You think you can threaten us? We will simply arrest your people. Oh, we will force you to stay. You can try." The general snarled something in his own language, then barked an order to his soldiers. They raised their weapons, pointing them at the nearest human officers. Nothing happened. Karthok looked at his soldiers in confusion. They were pressing their triggers, but the weapons remained silent. No energy bolts, no projectiles, nothing. "The targeting systems in those rifles were designed by human engineers," Ben explained. "So were the power cells. So were the firing mechanisms. They have all been remotely disabled." He smiled without warmth. "Did you really think we would build weapons we could not turn off?" The general stood frozen, his mouth hanging open. Around him, his soldiers stared at their useless rifles like children whose toys had been taken away. Ben walked past him toward the transport bay. "Good luck, General. You are going to need it." The same scene played out across the galaxy. On the Vraxi homeworld, human surgeons walked out of operating rooms in the middle of procedures. On the Selenari mining colonies, human engineers shut down the drilling equipment and left. On 100 different worlds, in 1,000 different cities, humans simply stopped what they were doing and headed for the nearest transport. Dr. Sam Patterson was one of the last to leave. He had worked at the Central Medical Complex on the Vraxi homeworld for 12 years. He had saved thousands of lives, performed surgeries that Vraxi doctors said were impossible, and trained an entire generation of medical students. In return, he had been called a barbarian butcher to his face more times than he could count. The hospital administrator, an elderly Vraxi named Counselor Veth, caught him in the hallway as he was leaving. "Dr. Patterson, please," Veth said. His compound eyes reflected 1,000 images of Sam's face. You cannot go. There are patients in critical condition. Without your surgeons, they will die." Sam stopped walking. He thought about the patients, about the lives that would be lost. He thought about the oath he had taken as a young man, the promise to do no harm. Then he thought about his colleague, Dr. Maria Gomez, who had been denied a promotion because the hospital board did not believe humans could lead departments. He thought about his intern, young Charlie Wu, who had been beaten by Raxi thugs simply for walking through the wrong neighborhood. He thought about all the human doctors and nurses who had given everything to this hospital and received nothing but contempt in return. "For 200 years, Sam said quietly, your people called us stupid. You said we did not understand proper medicine. You said our techniques were crude and dangerous." He looked at Counselor Veth with eyes that held no anger, only exhaustion. "Perhaps now you can prove how much better you are." He walked away without looking back. Behind him, he could hear Veth shouting for security, demanding that someone stop the humans from leaving. But there was no one left to stop them. The security systems had been designed by human engineers too. On the transport ship heading toward Earth, Sam sat next to Maria Gomez and Charlie Wu. None of them spoke. They simply watched through the viewports as the Raxi homeworld grew smaller and smaller behind them. "How many will die?" Maria asked finally. "Thousands," Sam said. "Maybe millions. And we are just going to let it happen?" Sam closed his eyes. He thought about his daughter back on Earth, the one he had not seen in 3 years. He thought about the home he had left behind, the life he had sacrificed for a galaxy that hated him. "We gave them everything," he said. "Our skills, our knowledge, our lives. They took it all and called us animals." He opened his eyes and looked at his colleagues. "We did not start this. We just finished it." The transport jumped to faster than light speed, leaving Raxi space behind. Across the galaxy, billions of humans did the same thing. They left their jobs, their homes, their entire lives among the stars. They abandoned the stations they had built, the ships they had crewed, the systems they had maintained. Within 72 hours, every human in Council space was gone, and the Council was alone. They had no engineers to run their factories. They had no doctors to treat their sick. They had no soldiers to fight their wars. They had no scientists to solve their problems. For the first time in 300 years, they had to do everything themselves. They were not ready. They were not even close. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Void Swarm was coming. The first sign of the Void Swarm was a shadow that ate the stars. Admiral Karthok, the same general who had tried to stop the human evacuation, commanded the defense fleet at the border of Kathrani space. He had 600 warships under his command, the largest military force the Council had ever assembled. He was confident. He was arrogant. He believed that nothing in the galaxy could stand against Kathrani might. He was wrong. The swarm appeared on his sensors as a dark mass, a patch of space where the stars simply vanished. At first, his officers thought it was a sensor malfunction. The equipment had been acting strangely since the humans left. Nobody knew how to calibrate it properly anymore. Then the mass began to move. It was not a single ship. It was millions of them, each one a living creature of metal and flesh, a nightmare born from some ancient horror that had consumed civilizations before the Kathrani had learned to use fire. The swarm moved as one organism, flowing through space like a wave of darkness, consuming everything in its path. Karthok gave the order to fire. Nothing happened. The weapon systems demanded authorization codes. Human authorization codes? The same codes that every human engineer had taken with them when they left. "Override the system," Karthok screamed. "Manual control." His officers scrambled to obey, but manual control required training that none of them had. The weapons were designed by humans, built by humans, maintained by humans. The Kethrani had never bothered to learn how they worked. Why would they? That was what servants were for. The swarm hit the fleet like a hurricane, hitting a house made of straw. Ships exploded by the dozens, their shields failing, their weapons useless. Creatures the size of mountains tore through the hulls with claws that could cut through anything. Smaller creatures, each one still larger than a human, swarmed through the breaches and consumed the crews alive. Karthok watched his fleet die from the bridge of his flagship. He sent message after message to the council, begging for reinforcements, but there were none to send. Every other fleet had the same problem. No codes, no trained crews. No hope. His last transmission was a single sentence. We should not have let them go. The swarm consumed his ship 30 seconds later, on the Kethrani homeworld. 3 billion people watched the sky and waited to die. The planetary defense grid was the most powerful in the galaxy. It had been designed by human engineers to withstand any attack. It was operated by Kethrani technicians, who had been told they were superior to the humans who built it. The grid failed in the first hour. High Counselor Vidurthax fled the capital city in a private transport as the swarm descended. He watched through the viewport as the creatures landed on the surface, as they tore through buildings and devoured everything that moved. He saw families running through the streets, children crying for parents they would never see again. Soldiers fighting with weapons that could not hurt the enemy. He saw his world die. The council had known the swarm was coming for decades. They had seen it destroy other civilizations on the far edge of the galaxy. They had prepared for it, or so they thought. They had built weapons and ships and defense systems, but they had not built them. Humans had, and now the humans were gone. Counselor Selena, the eldest of the Selenari species, sent a message to Earth from a hidden bunker on her homeworld. Her crystalline form flickered with fear as she recorded her plea. To the humans of Earth, she said, her voice trembling, "We've made a terrible mistake. We were arrogant. We were cruel. We treated you as servants when we should have treated you as equals." She paused, her light dimming. "Please, we are begging you. Return. Help us. The swarm will destroy everything if you do not." The response came 3 days later. It was a recorded message from a human woman named Nicole Grant, the Secretary of External Affairs for the United Earth Government. Nicole was sitting at a desk in a simple office. She looked calm, almost relaxed. Behind her, through a window, the blue sky of Earth was visible. "Thank you for your message," Nicole said. "The government of Earth has reviewed your request for assistance. After careful consideration, we have decided to decline." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. For 300 years, humanity served the Galactic Council. We built your stations, crewed your ships, fought your wars, healed your sick. We asked for nothing but respect, and you gave us contempt. You called us primitives. You called us animals. You told us we existed only because you permitted it. She leaned forward slightly. "Well, now you can see what the galaxy looks like without us. We hope you enjoy the view." The message ended. On world after world, the council species watched it in horror. The humans were not coming. The humans did not care. The humans were going to let them die. The Vraxi hive worlds fell in a matter of weeks. The Morphi gas giants were consumed from the inside out. The Thornax forest worlds burned as the swarm passed through. Rthax survived longer than most. He found a small station on the edge of the galaxy, a forgotten outpost that the swarm had not yet reached. He thought he was safe. He thought he could hide until the danger passed, but the station had been built by humans. 3 weeks after he arrived, the life support system demanded a maintenance code. A human code. Without it, the system would shut down in 24 hours. Rthax spent those 24 hours sending messages. He sent them to Earth, to the human colonies, to anywhere he thought someone might hear. He apologized. He begged. He promised anything, everything. If only someone would help Dot. No one answered Dot on the morning of the 25th hour. The life support failed. The temperature dropped. The air grew thin. Verdarkt huddled in the corner of the control room, clutching a communication device, still waiting for a response that would never come. He died in the dark, alone, surrounded by the ghosts of 3 billion Kethrani, who had died because their leader was too proud to treat humans with respect. Across the galaxy, the Council was dying. And on Earth, humanity watched and waited. Their time would come, but not yet. Not until the lesson was learned. The Void Swarm made its greatest mistake on the morning of its 3rd year of conquest. It crossed the border into human space. The first swarm fleet to enter the Sol Defense Zone consisted of 10 million creatures, the largest force they had ever sent against a single target. They had consumed entire civilizations with smaller armies. They expected the humans to fall in hours. They were wrong. Admiral Megan Cole commanded the defense from her flagship, the Unity. She was 52 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles to count. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, and she was ready. All stations report, she said calmly. Around her, the command center hummed with activity. Human officers monitored screens, adjusted systems, and prepared weapons that the galaxy had never seen. These were not the weapons humanity had built for the Council. These were something else entirely, developed in secret over 300 years of servitude. Defense Grid Online, reported Commander Jake Sullivan, her tactical officer. Weapons charged and ready. Fleet status? 600 ships in position. All crews at battle stations. Megan nodded. She looked at the main display, where the swarm appeared as a massive cloud of red dots, moving closer every second. The Council fought the swarm with fear, she said to her crew. They ran, they hid, they begged for mercy. We are not going to do any of those things. She stood up from her chair. We are going to show this enemy what happens when you attack humanity. She gave the order. Fire. The Sol Defense Grid activated all at once. Thousands of weapons platforms opened fire, sending beams of light that turned the darkness of space into a wall of destruction. The beams did not simply damage the swarm creatures. They unmade them, broke them down at the molecular level, scattered their atoms across the void. The first wave of the swarm vanished in seconds, but more kept coming. The creatures adapted, changed their formation, tried to find weaknesses in the human defenses. They had done this 1,000 times before against other species. They had always found a way through. Not this time. Human weapons adapted too. Human commanders adjusted their strategies in real time. Human ships moved with a coordination that the swarm had never encountered. Every time the creatures found a pattern, the humans changed it. Every time they exploited a weakness, the humans closed it. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the swarm fleet was gone. 10 million creatures, destroyed completely. Not a single human ship was lost. Admiral Cole looked at the display, now empty of red dots, and allowed herself a small smile. Send a message to Earth, she said. Tell them Phase 1 is complete. We are moving to Phase 2. The human counteroffensive began the next day. 600 warships, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, pushed outward from Earth toward the dying galaxy. They did not stop at the border of human space. They kept going, into the darkness, toward the worlds that had been consumed by the swarm. They found the swarm everywhere. And everywhere they found it, they destroyed it. Human scientists had spent decades studying the swarm from a distance, analyzing its biology, finding its weaknesses. They had developed weapons specifically designed to kill it. Plagues that only affected swarm creatures. devices that disrupted its communication and coordination. The swarm had never faced an enemy that understood it so completely. In 6 months, it was over. The Void Swarm, the terror that had haunted the galaxy for millennia, was extinct. Its homeworld, a massive organic structure in the darkness between galaxies, was destroyed by human bombs that cracked it open like an egg. And then humanity did something that surprised everyone. They stopped. They did not conquer the fallen council worlds. They did not enslave the survivors. They did not take revenge for 3 centuries of mistreatment. Instead, they helped. On the ruined Selenari homeworld, human medical ships landed and began treating the wounded. Dr. Sam Patterson, the same surgeon who had walked away from the Vraxi hospital 2 years before, led a team of doctors into the devastated cities. "Triage stations here and here," he ordered, pointing at clear areas in the rubble. "I want emergency surgery up and running within the hour." A young Selenari woman watched him with confusion. Her crystalline form was cracked and dim, barely alive. She had lost her entire family to the swarm. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you helping us?" Sam looked at her for a long moment. He thought about all the insults he had endured, all the times he had been called a barbarian, all the colleagues who had been beaten or killed simply for being human. Then he thought about the oath he had taken as a young doctor. "First, do no harm. Because someone has to," he said. "Because helping is who we are." It always was. Across the galaxy, the same scene repeated. Human engineers rebuilt power stations. Human farmers brought food to starving populations. Human soldiers protected refugees from the remnants of chaos. The survivors of the council species watched in amazement. They had expected conquest. They had expected slavery. They had expected humanity to treat them exactly as they had been treated. Instead, they received mercy. 6 months after the swarm was destroyed, the new Galactic Council met for the first time. It was held on Earth, in a great hall built specifically for the occasion. Representatives from every surviving species attended, their numbers greatly reduced from what they had been before. Ambassador Daniel Cooper stood at the head of the assembly. He was older now, his hair fully gray, his face lined with exhaustion. But his eyes were clear and steady as he looked out at the gathered representatives. 3 years ago, he said, I walked out of the old council chamber. I told you that humanity was leaving. I warned you that you would need luck to survive what was coming. He paused. Many of you did not survive. Billions died because of mistakes that could have been avoided. That is a weight we all must carry. He looked around the room. But we are not here to talk about the past. We are here to talk about the future. Humanity has been offered leadership of the new council. We have accepted, not because we want power, but because someone must lead, and we believe we can do it fairly. Councillor Selena, now the leader of what remained of the Selenari, raised her hand to speak. Her crystalline form had been repaired by human doctors, but scars remained. How do we know you will not treat us as we treated you? She asked. How do we know you will not take revenge? Daniel smiled, the first genuine smile anyone had seen from him in years. You do not know, he said. You will have to trust us. That is what trust means. You have to believe in something without proof. He spread his hands. 300 years ago, humanity came to this galaxy with nothing but hope. We hoped you would accept us. We hoped you would treat us fairly. We were disappointed. His smile faded. But we never stopped hoping. We never stopped believing that things could be better. That is what makes us human. We hope even when hope seems foolish. We help even when helping seems pointless. We love even when love is not returned. He looked at Selena directly. We could take revenge. We could enslave you, kill you, make you suffer as we suffered. But we will not. Not because we are weak, not because we are forgiving, but because cruelty was never who we were, even when you thought it was. Silence filled the hall. Then, slowly, Counselor Selena bowed her head. One by one, the other representatives did the same. Daniel Cooper looked out at the bowed heads and felt something he had not felt in a very long time: pride. "Let us begin," he said, quietly. Humanity had retreated. Loudly, they had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same again.